It's a beautiful morning, and I just wanted to film this scene. And I wish that you could smell what I smell out here today. It's the monsoon season, and so lots of summer rains here in August. 2018. It rained all night last night. It's clear this morning, and but there's just this smell of rain. Like nitrogen in the air. Lots of lightning that really brings nitrogen right to the growing life, the green life, for use. Fixates the nitrogen for these trees and makes everything really green. So last night I had an opportunity to talk with my kids a little bit about some of my concerns regarding Trump, and because there are people in their lives who are pretty pro-Trump, and they say things like, well, if you don't speak English, then go back to your country, and other kind of what I consider derogatory things that come from the Trump world. And I suppose Republicans, I'm surprised. I grew up Republican. I'm surprised to hear Republicans be so incredibly and not just anti-immigrant, but so nationalistic. Like the only people that can be in America are people who speak English and look like you or talk like you. But some things really bothered me about that. So I related to my kids that what really has happened and is happening that's so disturbing is that we've, as a nation, going back to World War II, which was a very scary and dark time, where the world was really fighting against fascism, fighting against the Nazis, particularly a nation, Germany, under Hitler's rule, that believed it was superior, and the people of Germany were very disgruntled about their economic and situation and position in the world, and that turned into a form of ethnic cleansing, where Jews who are not like them, who they believe should go back to their country, were eventually put into concentration camps during the war. They were demonized, and there was a desire to send them back to their country, wherever that was. I mean, at the time, they didn't have a country to go back to. They were always in Germany and Russia, but they were murdered and slaughtered by the millions as a result of this nationalistic, totalitarian, fascist belief. And we came together as a Western alliance, and we created what is known really as the Western Alliance of Liberal Democracies, with the United States and England and Germany and France. I mean, not Germany, but France and England. Eventually, we won the war. Germany became occupied essentially by the Allied forces. America, United States, and France and Russia kind of splitting up Germany, and America really occupied, in a sense, Japan. We're still there militarily today. Here it is in 2018, 50 plus years later, and the aftermath of World War II was significant, and it did leave a vacuum in terms of Russia and how Russia was an alliance, was an ally in the alliance with America, with the U.S., but it, for reasons I won't go into for time this morning, it really did leave a gap where Russia began to also kind of create this nationalistic view, uh, uh, an oligarchic view that Russia's the great country of the world, and so no other country's as good as Russia, and it left Russia in the same situation as maybe Germany during World War II, and created a Cold War between America and Russia, and then in the 90s, as a result, well, in the 80s and 90s, this Cold War between the Western alliances and Russia really came to an end. Russia fell apart due to their poor economy, and the royal families of Russia really began to lose power during this time. And the Berlin Wall fell, and Germany became a incredible country as it is today, really because of the Western Alliance and because of a liberal democracy. And let me tell you what I mean by liberal democracy. When you look right now at Minecraft's a very successful game. It's the first game I know of in history that was that negotiated and worked with several platforms so that you could play on several platforms with each other across platforms. It's cross-platform gaming. So you can play Minecraft on a PC and play with your friends in the same world that are and who might be playing on an iPhone, and another group of friends who might be playing on an Xbox. One group, one platform allows Minecraft to be played on their platform, but you can't cross-platform play, and it's Sony. PlayStation has not gotten on board with this. And it's because they believe that would hurt them economically. They want you to only use PlayStation platforms. And so if you're going to play Minecraft, you have to just play on PlayStation, and they want everybody else to play on PlayStation who want to play Minecraft. The problem with that is everybody else is liberalized economically their economic model and their play model by creating a cross-platform capability for Minecraft. And when Minecraft came out with that concept, they called it Better Together. And GameCon, which is a big conference where large gaming institutions come together like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, to kind of give their economic reports, and Nintendo and Xbox and PC and Apple are thriving in this area because of cross-platform play, and PlayStation's behind. So I would liken that scenario to Russia being like PlayStation in that they are isolating themselves, not opening their borders, not opening their trade. They are not allowing cross-platform play. You can play Minecraft, but not with others, right? And I would liken the other platforms that are open and allowing open source and open playtime across platforms, which is really a way of saying open trade and open borders, really has only benefited, because together we are better. And so Vladimir Putin was really put into office by the Russian royalty back when when communism was falling in Russia during the 90s. He did not win an election legitimately, and I think that's for some reason forgotten. The people that are supporting Trump now and overlooking the issues with Putin, who is still president today, it's very shocking to me, because they seem to have forgotten the Cold War, the very Cold War that they were scared of growing up in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Somehow they have forgotten, and now they believe Trump is a big ally. I mean, Putin. And it's shocking to me, especially some of these conservative Republicans and Mormons who know better, and they seem to have forgotten where they came from. or what they experienced growing up in the Cold War. So as Putin, the royal family was of Russia, and was really trying to maintain their power and position in Russia during the fall of communism, the fall of the wall, and etc. They thought Putin would be, who had kind of worked for them, and I'm totally paraphrasing, but they thought he would help them keep their positions of power kind of secretly, so they look like a democracy, but in truth they're still a monarchy, and Putin's their puppet. Well, Putin became president, but he turned on the royal family, and as an ex-KGB agent, Putin's plan was to make Russia great again, which means to Putin and to the Russians that Russia's the great world superpower, and in Putin's mind that means there cannot be a Western alliance and there cannot be liberal democracies. He's vehemently against those concepts, and so are many Russians. I work with people who lived in Russia, and I won't mention who they are, but they're close to the situation, speak Russian, lived there, served missions there, and they can tell you that this is Russia's MO, and somewhat of their culture, particularly with the Kremlin and Putin, in trying to use very conniving, sneaky tools to undermine Western alliances and liberal democracies, because the liberal democracies and Western alliances are so powerful, and they have the capability to stop Russia through sanctions rather than through war, and we have. And there were leaders who were very stringent with their sanctions against Russia, in part because there was a recognition by previous leadership like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and leaders before them, a recognition that despite their efforts to maintain some kind of relationship with Putin, they knew through our intelligence agencies that Putin's intent was to really create this very nationalistic, isolationist, Greek Orthodox Christian nation, without open borders, without free trade, and without a moral compass, really, except the moral compass being, if it's good for Russia, then it's okay to lie, it's okay to cheat, it's okay to murder, it's okay to break any laws or any moral codes to make Russia great again. And that's been his MO. And what's odd to me is people, again, conservative Republicans and Trump supporters who really seem to think Putin's awesome. I don't understand why they aren't recognizing some big red flags, like the fact that he has been president of Russia for decades. I remember conservative Republicans, in fact you can read this on the Congress website of the representative Republicans, where they say that they are one of their platforms is to ensure that we do not have a dictator who keeps themselves in office for decades and decades, because they had this conspiracy theory and paranoid belief that Barack Obama's plan was to maintain his presidency past second term, which was never true, and it never happened. And yet they are supporting a president and an ideology that leads to that very concept. The concept that Putin has put in place, which means he has been in power in Russia for really since the 90s. It's true, since the 90s. So that's nearly 30 years he has kept himself in power. That is a corrupt, dangerous situation that is frightening, quite frankly. And so he has used misinformation campaigns, which have been very effective. And I can go into a long story about what misinformation campaigns are. We, as America, have used misinformation campaigns during the Cold War. There's a classic case of it where a New Mexico resident, ex-Air Force resident, believed that there were UFOs, and I think this was back in the 50s maybe or 60s, and tried to turn over the because he was picking up radio signals that he believed were from outer space or from some kind of alien source. And the Air Force and the intelligence community of the U.S. let him believe it, because what he was really hearing was new communication codes from a U.S. military base that we were afraid the Russians would be able to hear or get access to, and they were shocked that a resident in a small community was able to pick up on these signals. So the way that they maintained anonymity and maintained the secrecy of the program was simply by not only allowing him to believe that these were UFOs, but then propagating the idea and even providing misinformation. Because by doing so, the Russians actually did then pick up on, through their intelligence, that we were worried about UFOs, and they began searching for UFOs. These are aliens that, don't exist, but they, there's this fantasy or belief that they were coming here from outer space. So we've done it, and we've been effective at it. But and so misinformation exists, and it works. These campaigns are happening now through Facebook and Twitter and various YouTube sources, where Russians began to propagate and spread these conspiracy theories that are outlandish, that have no evidence behind them, that are not in line at all with conservative values or really Christian values, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of what I know Jesus taught us to do as Christians. And these are being spread through various sources in the deep web, through places like 4chan and 8chan, where QAnon or Q has surfaced as an example today. This is happening right now, actually, where this individual supposedly is in the deep state with Trump, and he or she is anonymously posting to 4chan all these secrets to exonerate Trump and make it look like that Trump is really some kind of a messiah that has been called forth to. And some even some even Q followers even believe he was placed there by good aliens or by some kind of a mythical being to rid America of the deep state and return America to a nationalistic, isolationist, non-liberal economy or economic force, tearing down our institutions of alliances and liberal democracies that have been developed and put in place and have helped lead to American prosperity since World War II. And so these misinformation campaigns show up in these fringe groups where people who seem to be vulnerable to believing conspiracy theories because they're fascinating and they're somewhat mythical. There's no evidence, but it's kind of like believing that there might be a Sasquatch because it's really fascinating to think something could exist that we haven't really seen before. Some kind of cabal that is, or Illuminati that is leading the world, and all this other crap that is not real, but people believe it. And the last Trump rally, there were many QAnon followers at his Florida rally. They wore their Q t-shirts. Q is the number 17. Every time Trump said the number 17, In his rally speech, they went wild, thinking he was referring secretly to them. They believe he is secretly sending them codes through his speeches, through his Twitter feed, and it's delusional. And the thing that's frightening about it is that they are subject to, and so easily manipulated by Russian misinformation campaigns. The Russians could have a heyday with this kind of thinking, and Trump buys it line, hook, and sinker, because Trump is not an intelligent individual. Trump is not a good businessman. He has made some moves that in his life that have been fairly brilliant. I will concede to that, recognizing that he's been able to use a certain way of branding to finagle his business or to move his business ideas forward. He's failed, though, at a great number, and so have other successful business people. I think what's most concerning to me about Trump is his lack of moral compass in any business dealings he's ever done. The way that he's done business in New York is really through litigious means, which means that he's constantly using attorneys and the legal system to sue people and to bully them into certain business situations or into certain monetary gain. Whatever he needed to do to become liked, adored by women, and rich, he would do, no matter what, with no moral compass, willing to participate in the very things that conservatives and Christians and Mormons abhor and speak against, things that he had no problem being part of and supporting, like the porn industry, Playboy, and porn videos where women are not treated well, according to the conservative movement, and yet somehow Trump, that's overlooked. But it's not just that he wasn't involved in the porn industry. It's the fact that the truth about Trump is there is no moral compass for any activity he's engaged in ever in his life. It is always about him, and it is always about ways that he can promote himself and even through illegal means or immoral means make money, which is why he got tied up with the Russians and with Putin, with some of his business dealings, which has made him easily manipulated by Putin, and easily and very, very vulnerable to the Russian regime. And so obviously, if you're Putin and you see that the two candidates that could win in the United States is Hillary Clinton, who has a history of, as she was Secretary of State, being very harsh with Russia with sanctions, hurting them economically, versus Trump, who you could manipulate and easily control, who's super vulnerable to you. Of course you're going to promote Trump as much as you can. So Putin very clearly and distinctly directed a misinformation campaign with the intent to get Trump elected. He, of course, wanted Trump to be the president because he knew Trump would be putty in his hands. And so we have a president that has been voted in with the belief somehow that he is this great businessman and will do great things to get our country on course. And I don't know what that means. Our country's been doing very well for many, many, many years. We had a GDP growth last quarter, second quarter 2018, of 4.1%. And Trump stood up and said that that was the greatest growth of GDP we've ever seen. Yet in 2013, 2014, we saw quarters of GDP growth over 5.1%, 1% more, which is pretty significant than what we saw last quarter. So somehow people believing that Trump is a good businessman is just not true, and therefore he doesn't have the leadership temperament to actually negotiate. There is no such thing as the art of the deal. He didn't write that book Tony Schwartz wrote that book, and if you listen to Tony Schwartz talk about what it took to get Trump to even help him write the book, the intent was Tony would be the ghostwriter with Trump's name on it. But it sold really great. It sold well because Trump is good at branding himself. But there are plenty of documents or documented on YouTube where situations where Trump would call up in the 80s and 90s different news outlets pretending he was his own PR person, and he would say things about himself, about how women love him. He would say things even in public that he does not like to be with women, with his wives anymore after they've had a baby. He's just not attracted to them, and so he kind of gets rid of them after they've had children. And if you look at his history, that's what he's done. But he says it, and Trump supporters just don't care about that seemingly, and that's fine. The point that I'm trying to make for my kids in the future is to recognize the actual truth regarding who Trump is, who Putin is, and and how easy it is for how easy it is to get duped by misinformation campaigns. You are growing up in a generation where you have unfettered access to information and data. And so the challenge, that is a beautiful thing, and it's an exciting thing that will transform, it will forever disrupt our economy in good ways, and you get to be part of that. And what I want to advise you and guide you to remember is that being in the big data era, you will have access to more data than anyone has ever had in history. The challenge for you will be parsing through the data to really understand whether it's meaningful, helpful, or legitimate. So the way to do that is what I will say a liberal arts education, or a very in-depth and broad education. Because what education does, and what I've learned by getting my own education and going to Brigham Young University and Utah Valley University, it really pushes you to learn things you typically wouldn't have learned in ways that you typically wouldn't take time to learn. So it pushes you to stretch your thinking beyond the world that you are bound within. By your environment. You learn different way. So learning English and math and sciences and these different liberal arts, you begin to understand the way the world works in many different facets. But the number one thing that I gained from my education, and then, obviously I forgot to say I moved on to the University of Colorado as well at the medical campus in Denver. The thing that education did for me is it taught me to critically think and provide for me a healthy level of skepticism, not in a negative way, but in a critical thinking way. So critical thinking means that I can assess information, or you're taught to assess information and determine what that information, or interpret what that information can actually mean in the real world. So educate yourself and expose yourself to all forms of information and learn to discerning through the Spirit, combined with learning through your own mind and reasoning. It is very lazy in my mind to say, well, I'm just going to rely on the Spirit. Jared, the brother of Jared, when he was searching for ways to light his barges as he crossed over the ocean to the Americas, the Lord did not say to him, well, I'm going to show you everything that you need to do. What the Lord actually said to him was, in a way, you need to use your mind to critically think through a solution to lighting the barge. And he did. And then he came back to the Lord and said, this is what I figured out. And can you validate that? And the Lord did, and made those stones glow. But it was through his own critical thinking, hard work, and reason. So that using the Spirit coupled with your own critical thinking, which you need to develop through education, through liberal education and exposure to the world, going on missions and traveling the world, exposing yourself to multiple cultures, and remembering that Jesus taught us to serve one another and to love one another, and not to demonize one another because we don't speak the same language or look the same. My goodness, it just really starts to bother me. So come back to me, childrens of mine, with questions if you watch this and listen and wonder, what's Dad talking about? Have a lot of insight into this era in our democracy that I can talk to you about offline. And but I'll continue to try to say more as I'm able to for you, and really helping you in the best way that I can to grow up in this really amazing world that we live in. It is an incredible time where you will have access to more knowledge than any human in history has had ever before, or any population really. We're gaining data and information in the areas of science and technology, in understanding human behavior and understanding our genome and how the genome makes our bodies work or not work, and even age. And so we are in for a very beautiful golden time, and where I can help guide you and teach you, I will try to do that. I love you very much, and peace out, childrens.
Thanks for watching ASMR with G. Subscribe below.